Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Michael Wilson, and you're listening to the Lone Star Conservative, brought to you by Texcellent AC Service. And on the line, very exciting guest. We have Troy Miller coming on. Very excited to talk about this bill right now that's going to be talked about. We of course, here on the station believe in the importance of AM radio, go figure. And Troy Miller and their organization at the NRB is doing everything they can to make sure that AM radio stays intact. I talked before the break a little bit about why I believe this is important, but I want to bring Troy on to get his take. Welcome to the show, Troy.
Hey, thank you for having me today. It's great to be with you.
Absolutely. We love having you on. We love all the work that you guys do out at NRB, and this is certainly one of them. I remember when the whole debacle with Ford went down, when Ford announced that they'd be taking AM radios out of their vehicles, and the backlash from the kind of people that buy Ford was incomprehensible. People were like, absolutely not. There are very few mediums left in this world that are uncensorable, and AM radio is one of the only ones left that really allows, especially when you talk about live conversations where people can actually have real conversations with you on air. It's definitely a good medium, and I think it's very important that people are able to continue to receive that medium. So I want to get your take on what's going on and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, you're right. There's very few mediums that are, free and available by choice. And that's one of the biggest issues out there. There are nearly, I think the last time we looked, over 50 million people that listen to and depend on AM radio on a daily basis. And I grew up in rural Nebraska, and I can tell you rural America especially listens to AM radio. But even within the cities, the signal is stronger. It has a better access to get around and go farther. But look, there's a huge amount of money to be made here. And initially, the Ford decision was supposedly about interference and a part in that. So kind of my engineering background was like, yeah, that's not real. And the Office of Budget Management, I think, came out and said, yeah, it's about a $35 part, to take care of the interference. It's really about who controls information in the dash. That's really what this is about. So you hit it right off the bat. This is another kind of way for Ford and the other car companies to make a lot of money off selling subscriptions to drivers instead of drivers just having free access to over-the-air radio like they've had for decades. And so that's kind of what the fight's all about. And of course, we look at it also as the importance of AM radio because the top genres, the top programming on AM radio are Christian Teach and Talk, Conservative Talk, Spanish language program, and then sports is down there as well. A lot of people depend on AM radio for their sports. And then behind that is the whole emergency broadcast system. AM radio is the ideal frequency to get information out during times of natural disasters. And of course, we've seen this with the hurricanes and the floodings and the fires, all of those that are going on. So AM radio plays a very, very important role in our communications in society.
Certainly, and of course, I'm a believer in that as somebody that, of course, is on AM radio. I see the essential nature of it. I didn't always when I was younger, but now that I've gotten older, I've realized the importance. I think a lot of people underestimate, one, the listenership. I think people have this general belief that AM radio is on its deathbed, when it's certainly not. And I think the other issue, and you also hit it right on the head there, when you mentioned that there are very few ways these days to access real, solid, uncensored information for free. There are plenty of places you can still go for good information, but a lot of them are either subscription services, they require purchases, where AM radio, unlike those other avenues, unlike those other mediums, are still a way for me to get on air right now, be talking with you live, and for people to be able to text in, to tune in by just starting their car. And that's unheard of with any other medium. And I certainly think that when you see the lies and the background behind why they want to do away with AM radio, I don't think that that's coincidental. That when you mention that the top genres are in Christian and conservative talk, that has no bearing on their decisions. I certainly think that that's a large part of it, because the left frequently will do anything they can to not just censor, but just to quiet conservative voices, make them less appealing, less accessible in any way they can. And doing away with AM radio would certainly do that. But we've got a bill out now that would ensure that we have AM radio, that is accessible for every person, regardless of what they're purchasing, to make sure that they do have access to that free dispersible information. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the AM radio in every dash bill was introduced into Congress last year. We were actually hoping it would get through, but with the election year and everything that was going on, the bill just kind of slipped past. But it's really moving along now in Congress. There are currently 251 sponsors. You need about 218 in order to sort of get the bill to move out of committee. You get to about 280, and it sort of becomes a given that it's going to pass the floor. But it has a strong bipartisan support. And so we're really hoping that bill right now, we're working hard. I actually will be on Capitol Hill all day tomorrow just on this issue. We're hoping that it's going to make it into the July 23rd markup, which will be the next round of bills that will go to the floor. So they'll have their recess coming up, and then we hope that our goal is to get that bill voted on this year in September.
That would be absolutely excellent. We actually got a text in just now from one of our listeners that says, keep free radio free. And I think that is absolutely essential. And the real kicker here, and the left will also do this frequently, they'll kind of pervert intentionally, they'll kind of twist the narrative. I was having a debate with a guy one time. I don't even remember exactly what it was over. All I remember was that he immediately said, so you do like DEI. You want special access for this, this, and this. And I go, no. I don't want special anything. I want fair access for everybody. That's the whole point, is that I want this to be a meritocracy. If you don't succeed in AM radio, you don't succeed. It is what it is. I'm not going to ask for special access that nobody else gets. I'm not asking for that. What we're asking for, and really it's not even just for the people who are doing AM radio. The coolest part is that a lot of what we're fighting for is for the listeners. Because a lot of people aren't going to go buy subscriptions. Or if they are, the wave of places they could go are just insane. Whereas with AM radio, it's in your city, it's localized, it's the opportunity to have local conversations in a way that you are not going to get on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else. You're not going to get the same treatment that you get. You're not going to get the same localized programming that you're going to get. And I think that is absolutely essential. And so I'm very excited to see where this bill goes.
Yeah, and that's you made a great point there, because that is a key point. We're not just fighting for the AM broadcasters. This is really a two kind of pronged fight. One, it is setting a firewall up on the fact that the viewers, the consumers, the listeners should be the ones that have a choice. And, way back when radio came on board, under the government, under the FCC, one of the first things that was put out there was public interest programming. And that public interest programming should be free. And that was the whole idea of radio. And it can be ad supported and other things, but it should be free and accessible to the public. And we know these subscriptions, as you said, that's not going to be the case. They're not going to be free, and they're not going to be accessible to everyone out there. So that is what this fight is really about. This fight is access to free information, and then the localization. We're seeing so much of the nationalization of communications here that's going on. We're forgetting that the most important communities are the local communities that are served by the AM radio across this country. And so you're dead on. That's why this is so important. And we really encourage all, like the listener that wrote in that, reach out and tell your congressman that. Reach out and tell them you want free radio to continue.
And I think also, and you mentioned it, I have been a fan. It's been kind of a recent thing, but you've seen this sort of decentralization of media in general. A lot of Tucker Carlson is one of the big ones, but a lot of people have begun having their own programming that is just based around one personality. I don't have an issue with that. In fact, I think it's quite a good thing that you have this sort of decentralization. The issue is that, interestingly enough, as it turns out, Americans have a limited amount of resources. And when you have this decentralization where you're not paying a subscription to get access to 10 different things and 10 different opinions, when you are now paying for each individual opinion, it creates this sort of thing where you are bound to pick one or two people you get to listen to. That's not the case with AM radio. With AM radio, not only do you have round-the-clock programming, where you're listening on one station to numerous different voices, but you've got round-the-clock programming on multiple stations that you can change at the drop of a dime. You can just change to listen to somebody else. It is free information at any given point, and I know more than anything that the voices that want to quiet other voices would love to end free information, would love to end this opportunity to just listen. But we're not going to stand for that. We're not going to stand for this agenda that tries to take, and it's by the way, not that we have a lot of time to jump into it, but it does ring true a lot of the time that the left has this ideal where you won't own anything and you'll be happy about it. And this applies to property ownership. I was talking about that just a couple segments ago, actually, how when you have this young generation that can't afford housing, there's less of a vested interest in the success of the country because you don't feel like you own a piece of it. And the left would love nothing more than for the same to ring true in AM radio, that you don't really own it. It's not really yours. You don't really have the opportunity to just access information when you want to, however you want to. And so I think this is actually a crucial fight, really not just for AM radio, but in the principle that it stands for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a fight for the principle it stands for because, look, we know the left has moved so far to the socialist and even to the communist side of the way they feel the government should work. And the interesting thing about that is for years, as they were, thought they were the minorities in this, their message was tolerance, 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 free speech, the ACLU, all these groups out there until they thought that tide had turned and that they had the upper hand. And then at that point it was, censorship. This news has to go. You can't talk about that. And to control that messaging. And that is absolutely the pattern we're seeing today, that's going on from the left. And so they know that to silence conservative talk, to silence Christian talk, because so many of those ideas, the idea of ownership, are built on Judeo-Christian values and ethics that we find in the Bible. God said early on, gave to the Jews the ownership of their own land, even to the point that if they sold it, mortgaged it, or turned it away, 7 years later, it would go back to them. Ownership was so important for people to flourish and to prosper and to move forward. So, yeah, this is a big fight.
And the free speech fight alone, I mean, it's really funny because I remember reading a term a few years ago, and it had come out of, no pun intended, left field. But this term was called stochastic terrorism. And stochastic terrorism is when you say really mean things to people. And they were willing to label it to such a degree that it was considered not just criminal, but to a level of treason, that if you say these things, you can't do that. And one of the last avenues to say whatever you want, where YouTube can't cut off your funding, where you can't get this and you can't get that, is AM radio. And so I'm thankful for what you guys are doing. To wrap up here, Troy, can you tell everyone how they can get involved with NRB, keep up to date on what's going on, and make sure that they're in this fight?
Yeah, you can follow us on our website at nrb.org. Or you can find us on X and other social media. Just search for NRB Association and you'll find us, or look for NRB CEO and you can follow me and all the things that we're working on.
Well, excellent, Troy. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and more importantly, for all the work that you're doing for our listeners and for Christians really across the country, to make sure that we have equal access, to make sure that we are able to speak the truth. I want to thank you guys for everything that you guys do.
Well, it's a pleasure to do this and to be part of this calling.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And Lord willing, we'll hear a very good update from you soon.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
All right. Talk soon. Bye-bye.